What's going on, good people? Welcome back to another episode of Trading My Live Account. Today is day number 35. It's July 28th, 2023. We made some trades today, so let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about all of our important levels that we have on the chart. We have one zone down here below from around 570 to 550, and that's a zone that was based on some pre-market action this morning because we did have a little bit of news come out. We had the PCE price index, so that's what led to this reaction right here at around 8:30, and that's where I took trade one. But before we get into that, the other important level that we have is this zone that we drew off of some market action that happened at around 10 o'clock, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's start the day at number one from that PCE index. So once we had that spike to the downside, we pretty much just got back on top of the zone. We were already trending up coming into the zone before the screenshot was taken. So I'm looking for a higher low. So once I saw the higher low get presented to me right here, I just simply waited for prices to come back. I went long as prices came back to retest the higher levels low of support. And then I took it back up to the top of structure. And you know, in a pre-market, I don't usually like to do too much, but if I can catch one good trade, I will take it. So I was able to get a good trade out of that. And once the market opened, we pretty much had to move straight to the upside, but then we gave it all back plus more, and we came back to pretty much retest that wick that we established from 8:30. We pushed past it a little bit, but immediately came back. So that right there, it was a bullish sign in itself. And all day I've been noticing bullish signs even in the pre-market, and I want to kind of get into that once we start talking about these bear trend lines, but we'll talk about those on trades 2 through 5. So we see prices bounce back, come back into the zone, but from this point they created a double top. So this right here got me thinking about short trades, and that's actually what led to trade number 2 right here, because I went short here after seeing a double top and what I thought was a lower high. And when it comes to this trade, really the first entry is really my best entry, and I say that a lot on some other streams too, but it's been a while since I actually learned that lesson. So today is actually more of a refresher, because here's the thing. That's kind of hard to see. Let's go to the live chart. Okay. So here's the thing. I see the double top and then I get the lower high. So why I say that you should take the first entry is because usually that's when you have the most participation. So if I knew that this was a double top, the most logical place for the zone to hold up and act as resistance would be from a point where a lower high is created. So more than likely you can kind of get in front of that, short the top of the zone, have your order there, and expect for that to be the lower high. So once I missed that move on this swing right here from the top of the zone to the bottom, I should have been like, okay, that was my opportunity, I missed it. What you don't want to do is come back and try and take that second opportunity. See, I tried to short it again once I already saw that it worked once before, but no. You want to catch it the first time that it works, and if you don't catch it, just leave it alone and say, you know what, I missed that trade, but I will wait for the next best opportunity when it comes to what I have to trade with. So always remember, the first opportunity is definitely the best opportunity. So then that brings us to trade number 3, where I took the same trade as trade number 2, but what I learned was that even the good looking pullbacks can fail when the trend is very strong. And here's what I mean. After we saw that double top get formed, I assumed that eventually we should push down to the downside. Now right here we did extend above the zone a little bit on a wick, but I was like, okay, once we get back in here and come back into the zone, that's when the downtrend is going to resume. But that's not the case when the uptrend is really strong. And if you look at it, this actually turned out to be a higher low, but I just didn't realize it at the time until I got stopped out on this trade. So I was like, wait, hold on, this is a higher low. So I know as soon as I recognize that, you want to get out of the market. So I got out for a little smaller loss, a smaller loss than I took on trade 2. So that's good. Keep the losses small when you can. And what I realized was that we actually made a double bottom that was followed by a higher low. So you guys know from my previous videos and trade reviews that that's one of my favorite setups when I'm thinking about going for a long trade. So once I saw that, immediately got out. And then on trade 4, I said, okay, since we've already had the double bottom plus the higher low, more than likely we should be moving up to the top of this zone once again and coming back to test these wicks. So that's where I went long on trade 4, and so I went long here after seeing prices come back to retest a previous higher low. So whenever I'm in an uptrend, that's the strategy that I really want to use as my go-to, because those higher lows, for a lot of reasons, usually hold up and act as a level of good support that you can go long from. So that's what I was able to accomplish on trade 4. And then we come back to trade number 5. This was the last time I really tried to short this market, because even though I had so many good short signals, you got to remember what I was talking about on trade number 3. Even the really good pullbacks usually won't last too long and won't be too strong. So it's really, I'm not going to say that you can't trade the pullback if you want to and trade against the trend, but it would just be easier to go with the trend. And that's kind of what I'm learning. So even though it looked like such an appealing entry on trade number 5, because we came back to what used to be the top of the zone plus the bear trend line after we made a double top followed by a lower high. So, you know, once I get a swing high and then a lower high, I draw my trend line, wait for prices to come back and test it. But when the trend is that strong, you got to reconsider whether or not you really want to take that entry. Now, in a market like we were in, I think maybe yesterday, where we had a little bit more of a downtrend, that's the type of market where that entry really shines. But when the trend is as strong as it's been for the past 2 weeks and as strong as it's been today, you definitely don't want to take that setup too often in a strong uptrending market. So always remember that. So if we read the notes, I said, okay, I tried to short the top of the zone here again, didn't take another short trade for a while after this. The trend is up, and that's the biggest lesson that I realized, and that helped me a lot throughout the day, because from that point forward I was pretty much on the right side of the trade and the right side of the market by going long. So let's go ahead and get into that. So once we pushed up past trade 5, we moved away from the zone, created a higher low, and then established a new consolidation range. So I went ahead and boxed that up. So on trade 6, I went long at the bottom of the zone, right? But I should have taken the first entry instead of the second entry. And that's the second time I had to learn this lesson today. So what I mean is, the zone was established pretty much after we established this swing high, came back to make a swing low, and then came back to retest that level. On the way back down, you can pretty much assume that the zone is going to hold up. So for me, the best possible entry based on my strategy would have been at this touch right here. Now, I remember trying to get into this touch right here, but my order was a little bit too far down and I missed it. Now, I had another entry opportunity when it came back, but like I tell you all the time, that second opportunity is just not as lucrative, because you have more people participating on that first touch because everybody is expecting the same thing for the most part. So always make sure you get it on that first touch, because if you take it on the second touch, you risk the chances of you actually taking a loss, like I did right here on trade 6. And we spiked right back all the way out of the zone, came back to retest this lower zone really quick, and then spiked right back up. So whenever I see prices spike immediately back up through my entry price from a loss, I just take it again if the overall trend is still moving in the direction that it was. And if we were in an uptrend before that, but we just had a flash to the a flash to the downside really quick, but then we immediately came back and recovered all of those prices. As soon as the market gets back to your entry point from that original trade, I just got to take it, because I've learned over time that that momentum is going to keep going and eventually take your entry back up to where your first profit target was when you took that trade the first time. So on trade 7, I recognized that, was able to take it back up to a good level. I thought about taking it back up to the top of the zone, but at the time, because the momentum had already started from down here at 566, we had already moved about 60 points higher when we were at the top of this candle. So I was like, you know what? If that's the high of the move that I see right now with my own 2 eyes, let me just take profit there, because more than likely it'll pull back and then continue going. So it did pull back and continue, but I was like, you know what? If I had profits on this trade, it's really not a reason for me to get back in and keep riding the trend up. I'll wait for a better opportunity. So then I just kind of watched the market peak above the zone, had a false breakout for a little bit. And then right here, once again, we had, if you wanted to, you could draw another bear trend line because we established a lower high. But before that lower high got established, we actually had a higher low, a little micro one. So here's what I mean. If this was the swing high, when we pulled back, we created a swing low right here, pushed back up, and then came back to create what should be a higher low. So all I did was look to go long as prices came back into this level of support that used to be from the higher low. Now, I had a chance to get about maybe 17 to 18 points off of this trade, but the problem that I've been having all week that I can still kind of have a little bit is just not taking profits when they're there. I should have said, you know what, profits at the top of the zone should be my best option right now, since prices really haven't been able to break past that level. Now, even though the uptrend is up, more than likely they should break above that level, but I don't want to try and play the breakout. If the zone is here, then I can just use that as my exit level. So going forward, I always got to remember, take those exits at the best levels and don't try and hold on for more if it doesn't make sense. And in that scenario, it just made sense to get out right here. So I learned my lesson. You know, worst case scenario, it came back to break even and it stopped me out. So that's okay. I'll take a break even trade. But the thing is, those are the trades that I can really kind of just rack up on the side as I wait for my bigger trades to come about. So I really want to try and focus on getting those little small trades too, just as well as getting the bigger trades that I like to look for sometimes. So big lesson that I learned right there on trade number 8. So then when we come back to trade number 9, let's read our notes. Should be down here. There we go. So remember that it will be tempting to participate during a good looking pullback, but you have to resist that urge. And that's the same thing that I was talking about at trade number 9, that I was talking about from all of these other entries from earlier. Now, remember how strong the trend really is. The trend is really strong to the upside. But if we wanted to, we could create a bear trend line based off of this swing high that we created, plus this lower high, and then just extend it throughout the market. So that's actually what I did at the time when I was trading this. And as soon as prices came back up to retest the bear trend line, I was like, you know what? I see the lower high, I see the bear trend line, I gotta go short. Still ignoring the fact that the trend was really strong. But because I had saw this happen a little bit earlier on this sequence through trades 2 up until trades 5, I was like, you know what? If this trade starts to go against me by a little bit, I'll get out of it early. So instead of letting this trade hit my full stop loss, I was like, look, it just created a higher low 2 candles after I got into it. You know how I feel about those higher lows. If you're short, I got to get out. So I got out. And then once I realized that we were pretty much going to keep pushing higher, kind of like we did a little bit earlier, where I tried to short the zone multiple times from here. Kind of the same scenario right here. But once I saw that double bottom followed by a higher low, I just said, you know what? If the trend is up, we should be pushing higher. So let me get long at trade number 10 and then just try and take it up to my scalp target. And that's exactly what I was able to do right there. Now, we came back up, created another lower high. If you want to look at it right here, kind of, you could say this was a lower high, a minor lower high. And if you wanted to, you could have drawn another bear trend line from this swing high through that lower high and extended it out throughout the market. But in this occasion, because I learned from my 2 previous mistakes on the 2 previous zones, I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait for prices to break above that trend line. And as soon as they do, I'm going long. So that's exactly what I was able to do at trade 11 and was able to take it up to not all the way back up to the top of structure, but close enough to the point where I felt like I was good enough and I got out right there. So trading with the trend in line after being able to adapt to previous mistakes that I made. So I'm on the right track, and I just wanted to keep that going throughout the rest of the day. And that brought me to my next 2 trades up here at 12 and 13. So let's read the notes for those. So I took the same entry that I had as trade number 6 and had the same result. I took the trade again when prices spiked back through my entry price. So if we go back and look at trade number 6, look at what happened. We had, let's start from trade 5 and start from there. Spiked to the upside. We created a consolidation zone. I looked to go long on that consolidation, but prices came back, stopped me out. But when they spiked back through my entry price, I went long again. So when we look at 12 and 13, that's exactly what happened once more. The only difference was on this trade, I definitely got out for about I think it was, I went long at 70 and got out at 66. So just took a 4 point loss on that one, a really small loss, because I recognized that it was the same thing that happened at trade 6. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let it come all the way back down to stop me out for a full stop loss if I see what's going on. So I was able to recognize that, adapted pretty quick, took a small loss. But as prices came back to retest that level again, I had to go long because it just made sense. The overall trend is up. We tried to come back to that level, but that level provided support once more. So I said, hey, gotta go long right there. Took it back up to the top of structure, and I got out. I thought about holding it, and I could have made good profits, a little bit extra. But at the time, we were trading at the top of the zone, so I don't want to be the one to expect the zone to break out. If the zone is up there, let me just take my profits when they get there. And if they keep going, I can always trade the breakout if the breakout is successful. But that actually was not the case today. And I actually didn't draw up that zone. So let's go ahead and do that right now. From this higher low up to this swing high, and then extend that across. Okay, cool. So as we can see, the breakout was actually unsuccessful and did not continue moving higher. And this was actually the highest price for the day, up here at 711, which is going to be very significant because this is actually what helped lead me to being able to actually take the short trade a little bit later on the day during my next 2 trades. And that's what I want to talk about for trades 14 and 15. So let's go read the notes real quick. I initially shorted here after seeing a double top, a lower high, and a gap down all occur at the same time. So this is what I mean. We saw the double top. Let's go ahead and mark that up. We had a double top followed by a lower high. Well, excuse me, the lower high was right here. And then we had the gap down. So I'm like, okay, those are 3 bearish signs all happening within the same 15-minute time period. And then you also take into consideration the fact that we established, I guess you could call this a head and shoulders top. We had the head right here, the left shoulder over here, and the right shoulder on this side. And then we came back to retest. This is the neckline, right? Retest the neckline of that head and shoulders, and we created a double top at the neckline followed by a lower high and a gap down. So I'm like, okay, even though the trend has been strong all day, it's just too many bearish signals for me to try and go long based off of this trend line not holding up. So I said, you know what? On this occasion, I'm going to go short. And I did. The only thing was I cut this trade a little bit early as soon as I saw it starting to go against me, because I started to think that this was going to be the start of another up leg that was going to probably come all the way back to either test the top of the zone or to test the highest price for the day. But same place that I got out at when I was like, oh, I'm too scared, was actually the same price level where prices reversed from. So sometimes in the market it's like that. But the biggest thing I learned right there was, if you believe in your entry, sometimes you just got to hold it through thick and thin and just stick with it no matter what. But as I saw prices come back and spike back through my entry price that I took on trade 14, I was like, you know what? I got to go short right here. So I took that same trade and was actually able to hold it all the way back down to what used to be a previous higher low, back from when we bounced off of the zone back at 12 o'clock a little bit earlier in the day. So that was my best trade of the day. And after that, I just decided to call it a day because, you know, I started off rough on trades 2 through 5. I was kind of struggling a little bit, but once I realized that the trend was up and it was going to be up for a while, I got back on the right side of the market and just started making good trade after good trade after good trade. And even when the trend switched up on trades 14 and 15, I still was able to come back, adapt, read the market, and get on the right side. So I'm proud of my performance today. I would say overall it's pretty decent. You know, still a couple of mistakes that I got to clean up. I got to work on my patience. A lot of the losses that I took today, like the ones on trade 6, the ones on trade, which one was it? Definitely 6, definitely 7. A lot of those trades came from me being impatient, where I see what's about to happen, but either I'm not taking it when I should, and I'm trying to wait for better confirmation and not being as aggressive as I should be, or I'm just getting into the move too late. So gotta work on my patience, and I think that ultimately comes back down to discipline. You got to have the discipline to be able to wait for your best possible setups. The same setups that you practice all the time, you got to wait for those. And when they come around, you got to execute them the right way. So I need to have a good entry. I need to manage the trade correctly while the trade is open. And then I need to have a great exit price. So I think if I focus on all of those things, I should be good. It's good to end the week off the right way. You know, we struggled a little bit at the beginning of the week, but finishing strong is always good because you can go into the weekend with momentum and try and just study hard, become a better trader, learn some things that you need to, brush up on all of your mistakes, and come back on Monday as a better trader. So that's going to be my goal this weekend. I hope you guys learned a lot this week because I feel like I definitely did. I'll be back on Monday. But until then, you guys, take it easy.